Lesson 1.8 seems a little random, although we've been all over the place in Chapter 1. But we're going to talk about coordinate planes. And the reason we're going to talk about coordinate planes is because we've been discussing integers. Now, if you're looking at a coordinate plane, you can look at the part that you're most familiar with is this part here that's actually a number line. That's going to be quadrant 1. And you can think about that as that's the first that you learn positive numbers. Now we do read the quadrants going in a counterclockwise direction. There's quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Again, if you think about the next thing you learn about the negative numbers. So that moves to the left. And then you learn about other kinds of negatives together, combining things together. The point in the middle, 0, 0, is called your origin. So the origin is right here in the middle of our two axes. We have an x-axis and we have a y-axis. X comes before y, so when we're reading a coordinate point, we read the x point or the x direction before the y direction. And when we look at these different quadrants, we see to get to this first point here, right, here's my first point, I went to the right, just like you read. You go left or right first, and then you go up and down the page. So I'm going to the right, 4 positive, and I'm going up 2. So that point is 4, 2. If I'm in quadrant 2, I must have went to the left first. So I went to the left, -3, and then I went up 2. Sorry. So the left, and then up. So that's -3, 2. Same thing you can see to the left and down, -4, -1, and to the right, 2, but then I went down 4, so that's 2, -4, and that's in quadrant 4. If I ask you to describe the location, I'm asking you to tell me what quadrant it is. If I'm asking you to label the point, then that would be the directions that I need to move to get to that point. So it says plot and describe the location for these points. A is at 4, 1. Again, left or right first, it's positive, so I'm going to go over 4, and I'm going to go up 1. There is my first point, and I'm going to label it A. To describe its location, that would be in quadrant 1. That's very sloppy, I apologize. For B, it says 0, so I'm not going to go left or right, but then it tells me I need to go -3, so I'm going to go down. Doesn't like when I make dots on here. Come on. Yeah, I'll just do that, and I'll get a little bit of more. No, still doesn't like my dot. Oh, there we go. 0, -3, and we have our, let me get my pen a little bit smaller again now. It's being a stickler with the stylus. So now I have point B. Now, point B is not in one of the quadrants. It is exactly on one of the axes. So if I was going to describe point B, that I would describe on the y-axis. Now for letter C, or for point C, I want to go -2, so I'm going to go over negative, and I also want to go down because it says -5. And there's going to be my point. Oh, that one it let me draw in there. That's going to be my point C, and that location would be in quadrant 1, 2, 3. That's in quadrant 3. And you notice we use Roman numerals for those quadrants. Now, making a scatter plot. Scatter plots are a little bit different. They're going to be a line graph. It's for data. And when we do data, sometimes our data doesn't come out in a perfect line graph. So when we're making a line graph, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have still a y-axis and an x-axis. They're going to go on and on forever. We're going to go ahead and label them. So we see a biologist measures the length and masses of 8 rainbow trouts. We're going to look at the X. What does the length of the trout have to do with the mass or the weight of the trout? So we would go ahead and we would plot each one of these lengths as our x-axis and y as our as the mass. So I'm going to go ahead and every blue line here, I don't know if you can see those very well, it's going to be 100. It's going to make us kind of squished in here. And then each one of the blue lines going up will also be 100. Let's see if we can at least get just a little bit of an idea what this would look like. So the length for the first one's 405. So 100, 200, 300, 400. So I'm over to the right, just past the 400 mark. And I want that to weigh 715. So 100, 200, these are the red lines now, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. So I want to make that at about 405 and 715. I'm going to make my, if it'll let me, I'm going to make my dot. It's not going to let me. I'm going to cheat it here. And I'm going to make circles instead. And let's make them blue. All right, so I'm going to go over 100, 200, 300, 400, just past it, barely. And I'm going to go up 700, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and just past that, just barely. So let's put our first one right about, it came down a little bit. Let's move that up. And apologize for this. Let's make it solid though. Okay. So just to give you an idea. So the next one, 360, I'm going to go over 100, 200, 300, a little bit past halfway. That would be my 350. So I'm going to be at 360. And then I'm going to go up 557. So let's go ahead and do that. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 50. So here would be my 57. Oops, it's not giving me my eclipse went away. Go back over to my 360, and then we want to go up to, that's 400, 500, 57. And it's not making it solid again. It's really being quite the stickler. All right, let's see here. Let's try it this time. My next one, 413, so just barely past 400, and 754. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 54 again. So that's 50. Let's do 54 right there. It's a smaller point, but we're not going to mess with it right now. So you can see what I'm doing. The x-axis, 247, 200, here's my 50, and 247 is pretty close. And then 184, 100, almost to 200 between the 150 and the 200. So I'm getting these dots that are, or points that are on here. 280, it's going to be almost to the 300. 250, 1, 250 right there. We'll make that one. And 265 and 223. So let's go over to our 250, 265, 100, 223. We'll put that one right about here. It'd be nice if these were all the same size too, I think. That one's sitting a little too close to 200. Move that up just a little bit. And then our next one, 351. So here's my 350. Get my eclipse again. 100, 200, 350, 351, 100, 200, 300, 400, 506. That's going to be almost on that line. Now, this would be real data, and whenever we deal with real data, we have trouble with, sometimes we have trouble with a line graph that it works perfectly. So what you're going to do with a scatter plot is after you get your points in there, you're going to approximate and go ahead and see what that pattern was. So if we look at our pattern, when we describe any relationship you see, we can say whenever the length of a trout gets larger, their weight also increases. That's how you use a scatter plot. And that will conclude not only lesson 1.8, but it will also conclude chapter 1.